What's up? It's Marco, Sage of Soccer, and over the past few days, a couple teams have been released for the USA Youth National Teams, a U20 camp and a U19 camp, and both these teams are a little bit intriguing. Now, there aren't star power on these teams, it's in the middle of season, so if you don't see a player on these lists, it's probably a good thing more than a bad thing. But it's pretty good, we're getting a lot of depth, we're casting a wide net for youth players, and a lot of good things coming from this group. There's a U19 camp, which we had not had recently, and I feel like that's big news, getting a good look at 04 players, a couple 05s in there as well. And for the U20 camp, it's more of a tryout for the upcoming CONCACAF tournament, where we get to give a real good chance to a lot of the more fringe players and see how they can do. And I'm pretty excited about this. Like, just looking over these teams, there are very few snubs that I could even think of, like Zach Booth, but he's probably injured. So, like, it was a very good camp to bring to these groups, and I feel like our youth program is going to be a lot stronger moving forward because of it. And there are too many players to really run through everybody, so I just want to talk about a few guys who I think really stick out and have a good chance of affecting us in the CONCACAF tournaments coming up, or could just be very good players in the near future. So for the U20 team, and again with this U20 team, it's more of like almost like a depth pieces for the U20 team that's going to be competing in the CONCACAF tournament coming up. Like, these guys aren't the locked-in starters, but still some very talented players and some good young players as well. I think I see three at least 2005 players, which is very good. So in goal, first guy to talk about is Chris Brady, because he's somebody who actually probably is on that top tier, but just because of how Chicago is right now, Gabriel Slonina, he's the number one. So if he gets called up to something, Chris Brady stays and covers for him. And then if they really want to keep him for something, Chris Brady will get called up to these camps. He's probably second or third in our goalkeeper tier list right now. Either him or Alex Borto would be number two behind Gabriel Slonina, which hopefully he'll end up staying, because we were talking about dual nationals earlier, because he's not looking good right now either. But yeah, Chris Brady, he's a very good shot stopper. He might be the best shot stopper in this entire group, even better than Slonina. But from what I've seen, rounded-wise, he could be a little bit better with his feet, but that shot stopping ability is really good, and he's a top-tier goalkeeper who is probably going to be getting a lot of playing time sooner rather than later, whether that's because Slonina leaves or whether that's because Chicago finds him some place to play, but he looks very good. Antonio Carrera out of FC Dallas, he's a homegrown player, is also in this group. He's somebody who I believe could be a dual national, so calling him in is good, but he's a strong goalkeeper, but it's just this goalkeeper group is really good right now, and he's probably only about fourth at best right now in this group, but he's still a solid player. Moving into defenders, a couple of guys to talk about. Jaziel Orozco out of Real Salt Lake. He's been getting a few starts in the MLS. I've been meaning to talk about him in the MLS player talks, but I don't want to introduce him on a 6-0 loss. So he is starting, but yeah, could be better, and he's looking pretty good. Now, he's got a lot of good traits with him. I'm interested to see how good he can be. Starting in the MLS, that's obviously a big deal, but at the same time, I'm not too sure if I'd rate him above a Jalen Neal, a Kobe Henry, a Justin Shea, Brandon Craig, all of them just yet. But getting playing time in the MLS, that is a big deal, but keep in mind that just because somebody's playing, a team I go, for example, is Aston Villa. There are a ton of players who they play a lot and give time in the Premier League to, who just aren't that good, Keenan Davis. Every time I saw that guy play in the Premier League, it's just okay, yeah, just sub him on for a bit, give him a run out, he's not going to do anything. He's actually been looking okay in the Championship on loan, but it doesn't mean too much if he's playing if quality isn't there. But he could be a very good player, I'm just making that point. Caden Pierre is somebody, he's a right back out of Sporting Kansas City. I've been hoping he gets some more time this year, but I think he's a promising player. Anthony Sorensen of the Philadelphia Union. I like him as a left back, but Kai Wagner's in front of him, and I feel like he's still got a couple more years before he really develops. Devon Tanton out of Fulham. He's looking pretty good in the Fulham system. I think he's been getting a couple of minutes with the U23s, which is very good. About the same level that Alex Borto is, and I'm pretty high on Alex Borto. Looks like he's taking on Marlon Fauci, the other American, at Fulham's spot, so that's very good, and I think playing for Fulham is probably a few years away. I mean, they're going to be in the Premier League next year, but I'm assuming they'll be back in the championship the year after. But he's someone who looks promising. And Thomas Williams out of Orlando City, left-footed center back, seems to be there instead of Casey Walls, which is interesting. But I don't think he's really. There's not like a real positive trade to go off like a Jalen Neal or Justin Shea, but being a left-footed center back is definitely very good, and he is somebody to look out for because I feel like he does have some talent. Now going to the midfielders, some guys to talk about are Asmir Bedraterovic. I practiced pronouncing that for a full minute before this video started. I think I got about as close as I'm going to get. Out of New England, he's one of the 2005 players I mentioned, and he looks pretty good. Believe he's got a homegrown contract with New England. He's been playing at a lot of different positions for this team. I remember in a camp, they even tried him out at wingback. That's definitely not his best position. He can play some forward. He can play in the midfield. Like a lot of different spots for this guy. And Esmir, I'm not going to try saying his last name again. He's somebody to keep an eye on because I feel like there's a lot of talent there. And he could be the first homegrown player to really break through in New England. And ever? Have they had like a real homegrown star? But he's looking pretty good. And I'm something to keep your eye on. Next guy is Javier Casas out of Chicago Fire. And I'll be honest, I really haven't seen too much of Casas, like a little bit here and there. But I hear a lot of really good things about him. And like that's going to be a theme with a lot of the U19 players because you can only see so much of these guys. Like, I really only value how they play in the first team, but how they're doing in the youth system is indicative of how they will perform. But I'm hearing a lot of good things about Javier Casas, but I can't speak too much on him. Same with Tarun Karamuchi. He's at, I butchered that name. He's at San Jose. San Jose Earthquake, but he's going to be going to UCLA in the summer, which is an interesting call. We have had players like Mark McKenzie and Reggie Cannon who go to college for 1 year, come back to their club, or maybe they just go to college, go abroad, like someone like a Dante Polvera has done. But I'm hearing some good things about him, but the main thing is he's a 6 in a group where the 6 hasn't exactly stood out. Obed Vargas is probably our top one, and while I do like him as a prospect, he's still a very young player. Even for this age group, he's a very young player. So Daniel Leva's in this group. I don't think he's going to be the guy who really separates himself. Daniel Edelman, he's good, but he's not like a superstar player. So it's good to be giving a lot of guys these chances. I look forward to seeing how he can do, like how he looks, but I have a feeling he'll stay going to college, and it'll be a couple more years before we hear about him again. And last guy I really want to talk about in the midfield is Nico Sarakas, who is from San Jose. He's another one of those 05 players who's been getting MLS minutes. He's actually had some pretty good moments in the MLS. He combined really well with Cade Cowell a couple games ago, and very promising player. Like when you're doing something as a 2005, like what is he, 16, 17? Like that's always going to be something to take note of. I really like his technical ability. We'll see how he develops physically because he's obviously behind everybody, but it's going to come eventually, and a really good, promising prospect. Next, moving to the forwards, and a couple guys to talk about. Damian Downs. He's out of FC Cologne in Germany. He's a dual national, and kind of interesting, because he hadn't really been on my radar. I've heard about him. He's had a couple of pretty good performances for Cologne, but he hasn't exactly been anybody who I've, like, really clamored for a call-up. So it's good to see him for sure, because as I mentioned before, he is a dual national. But I feel like this speaks more to, I don't want to say a lack of forward depth at this age group, because Ricardo Pepi should be playing for this group. He's just so good that he isn't. So I don't want to call it a lack of forward depth, but just lack of real options at the forward position. And it's good to get this guy looking, because he's been scoring a good amount of goals in the German youth systems. But again, it's the German youth systems. You can't judge it too much, but I'm excited to see how Damian Downs can be, because he does have a pretty good eye for goal, and I'm excited about that. Next, sticking in Germany, we've got Christian Fletcher. He's the high school player who got scouted by Borussia Dortmund, and he seems like he's going to be going there. I can't say for sure. It seems like it's a consensus that he is going to go there, but it hasn't been officially announced. Think about when Caden Clark, like everybody knew he was going to RB Leipzig, but it wasn't confirmed until 6 months before it happened. So I think that's the situation Christian Fletcher's in right now, but I can't say for sure. Just an extremely talented athlete, got an eye for goal, great speed, really good dribbling ability. I've seen him do very good things against the Philadelphia Union Academy, and he looks like a very good player. He's unattached at the moment, but He's been seen training in Dortmund, so I'm hoping that's where he is. He looks like a really talented player, another one of their 2005s. Christian Fletcher might be the player with the highest ceiling out of anybody here. It's tough to say again because he's looked really good, but it's been at a certain level. So we have to see how that translates, but he's someone to be excited about. Next guy I want to mention is Luka Kolashu. I'm not feeling confident about these names, man. He's the USA and Canada dual national. He's playing in Espanyol in Spain. So he's actually kind of interesting because I had honestly expected him to accept the Canada call-ups. They are inviting him to these camps, but he just either hasn't been able to come, or the camp's been canceled, or his club hasn't released him. And it really reminds me of how Jonathan Gomez treats the American camps, which is good for Luka, probably bad for Gomez, though. Which is like, oh, no, my club can't release me, I can't make this. Oh, the USA camp? Okay, I'm out, I'm going. Like, it's the USA camp, can't decline that. Like that's how it feels. Like with Jonathan Gomez, it was like, oh, we've got these U20 camp. Well, I'm sorry, I've got the USL playoffs, I can't make it. It's like, well, Diego Luna and Kobe Henry do too, and they're coming. No, I can't make it. It's like, okay. I have a feeling he wants to play for the USA team. I believe he's from, or was born in America. I have to double check where he's raised, but he's a good winger. I really want to see how he can develop at Espanyol, because it's always good to see when you have players coming through an academy in Europe and like really making noise. So he could be good there, but again, we have to see. He's still in the youth system. I believe he's with their B team now, though, so definitely progressing. And last guy from the U20 group I want to talk about is Dante Sealy. I've talked about him enough in the past. I don't really feel like I need to go over how he is again. Really good player, pretty inconsistent. He's the only real he's the player who I have on this list where I'm like, it's nice to see him there, but at the same time, like, he really shouldn't be. Like, he's the only, like, U20 regular, like, aside from Chris Brady, and I explained Chris Brady's situation. Like, with Dante Sealy, it's like, should he really be here? I mean, PSV really shouldn't have released him, and it's a little bit of a concern that he did. He is only at PSV on loan, and he's got another year of that now. You have to wonder if he ends up back at FC Dallas. If they're releasing him for this, they might not want to keep him long term, and something to think about. But Dante Sealy, he's got a lot of potential. Like, out of these wingers, he's like, I'm talking about him for a reason. He's a great player, but that's a little bit concerning. But that's it with the U20 group. Some really talented players there. Now into the U19s, and like with the U20s, like I could talk about a decent amount of them. With the U19s, like a lot of this is just going off of like things I've heard about them from other players. Like, I haven't seen many of these guys play. Not many have had any real time in the first team. So, but I do want to mention some of these guys because they do appear to be talented players, and a lot of them are pros to begin with. So something interesting is the goalkeepers. Despite what I just said, a lot of really talented goalkeepers. The first of which I want to talk about is Jeff Dusnup, who I believe had to pull out of this camp, but he was listed on the roster initially. Very talented goalkeeper out of Utah. I won't get like completely into his play because like projecting how goalkeepers will be is even harder than regular players, and it's like the one position that I haven't played like for real at like any real level. So I feel like less confident to talk about goalkeepers, but he's further along at his age than David Ochoa was. So just keep that in mind. He could be a really talented player. Also, Gavin Beavers out of Real Salt Lake. Real Salt Lake just keeps producing good goalkeepers, and somehow Zach McMath is still their starter. And I like Zach McMath. He was good at the Union. Sucks that Andre Blake had to take his spot. Well, not for us, but I liked him. Fred Emmings out of Minnesota United. Really decent keeper. Again, haven't seen him too much in the first team, but a name I know. And Emmanuel Ochoa. He's been in these camps for a long time, and he's looking like he's developing really well. It's tough to see him replacing JT Martinowski because he's been looking. I really like him at San Jose, and he's still a pretty young player, especially for a goalkeeper. But he's looking good. I believe that San Jose just has too many just strong goalkeepers. I think it was Callender who ended up having to leave despite being a really good prospect. So something to remember. But Emmanuel Ochoa, I feel pretty good about him. For defenders, 3 players I want to talk about. Alex Freeman out of Orlando City. This guy, from what I'm hearing, is a very talented attacking fullback and someone to keep an eye on. Again, haven't seen him play much, but I'm thinking he's going to be pretty good. Similar story with Justin Reynolds, another really talented attacking right back. actually not related to Brian Reynolds. His brother is at FC Dallas. I believe he's going to play in college, though. But Justin Reynolds out of Chicago, he's someone who could be really promising. And right back isn't the strongest position with the U20 group right now. Justin Shea can play there, but it's not the best position. So having a guy like Reynolds, Freeman, like getting them to the U19 camp, like just seeing how they could do, that could be good. Because I think from what I've gathered from Orlando fans, a guy in the U20 camp, Michael Holiday, like they rate Freeman a little bit higher than him. Just Holiday's older, so he gets more playing time, which obviously he makes sense. And last defender I want to talk about is Josh Widener, who's been doing very well at Louisville City. They lost Jonathan Gomez and bring in Widener, who's a 2005. He's looking really promising. He's starting in the USL consistently. Like, you shouldn't really be doing that at his age, like at any pro level. And it's good to see. I'm pretty excited about this guy. He's looking good. I want to see how he does in this camp, and if he can really stack up, like, he could be good. And someone to keep an eye on. I think when he turns 18, there's a decent chance he ends up heading to Europe. Now going to the midfield, Reed Baker-Whiting out of Seattle Sounders. Another guy who's been getting some actual pro minutes despite being a 2005. Like, he's been playing like alongside Obed Vargas and Daniel Leva, Josh Atencio, that really solid Seattle Sounders youth group. Like, he's looking really good. Some other names, I haven't really seen these two play much, but Benjamin Kremashki out of Inter Miami. Again, haven't seen this guy play, but Inter Miami, they've got a really good academy system, which I didn't really expect them to get because I don't know why I didn't, because Miami's like a hot spot for talent, and they're owned by David Beckham, who came from United, like class of 92. Like, it makes perfect sense, but I just didn't really see it happening. But he's someone, he plays at 8 and a 10. He looks pretty good. Robert Desiel Jr. out of Bayern Munich. We got a Bayern Munich player, definitely somebody to talk about. Again, just playing in the German youth system, so I can't really speak on how he is as a player, but someone to keep an eye on. And lastly, Brooklyn Reigns out of Houston Dynamo. He recently appeared in the US Open Cup game. He's looked pretty good. He comes from the Barcelona Residency Academy, same place where Matthew Hoppe, Caden Clark came from, and someone who could be very talented. Like, I'm expecting Brooklyn Reigns to definitely be named to keep an eye on in the future, because for the Houston Dynamo, he might be a real breakthrough player for them. And especially at that defensive midfield position, which has been a weakness for the USA for, well, Tyler Adams is pretty good, but depth-wise, it's a pretty big weakness for us. I'm interested to see how Brooklyn Reigns can do. And lastly, going to the forwards, Rodrigo Neri. Again, haven't seen this guy play too much, but out of Atletico Madrid, definitely something to take note of. Like, when you have a player from, like, an academy like that, like, I remember there was a team, like, it was my FIFA team when I played FIFA, Morecambe FC, and they're in the English League One now. They signed this guy, Carlos Mendes Gomez, and, like, I was, like, looking at him, it's like, oh, he used to play in Atletico Madrid's academy. That might probably means he'll be good, I guess. But I'm, like, didn't get too excited, but then, like, he ended up scoring the goal to send them to the League One, got sold to Luton Town in the Championship, might be a Premier League player next year, so get excited when you have players in academies like this, but again, haven't seen him play too much, can't talk about him much. So yeah, that's everybody I want to talk about from the U20 and U19 groups. I don't think they'll have any games, so not much to talk about. Just wanted to mention it because a couple of camps that could be really good and some pro players getting attention who I could very easily see making MLS debuts pretty quickly. And yeah, I think the guys probably who I'm most excited about, Chris Brady for sure, Berek out of New England, Sarakas, Christian Fletcher for sure, Dante Sealy, every goalkeeper in the U19s basically. It's a really strong group there. Alex Freeman, Josh Widener, Reed Baker-Whiting, like Brooklyn Reigns, a lot of really talented players who, like, I've seen, and a lot of really talented players that I haven't. And this is why it's really good to have these camps, because you get to identify this talent. You get to see who's going to be those really good players from these groups. So yeah, that's all I really have to talk about. Pretty nice to see these groups happen. I'm hoping that a couple of these players can break through, really help the youth teams moving forward, maybe even help the U.S. men's national team in the near future. But yeah, that's all I've talked about right now. See ya.